Final call courtesy of NBC Sports. Tyler Reddick won second place. Joey Logano came in third. And Asian stock markets lower. U.S. stock futures trading lower overseas. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Chili's introduces the new crispy ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your crispy ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with 1 of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's crispy ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
Police are investigating the deaths of 3 close friends who drove to a lake in Frostproof, Florida to go fishing Friday night and wound up beaten and shot to death. 3 victims identified as 23-year-old Damian Tillman, 30-year-old Kevin Springfield, and 27-year-old Brandon Rollins.
Now, Rollins was able to make a desperate call for help to his father. His dad made it to the lake where his son was barely alive but still able to talk. Detectives are not releasing exactly what he said at this time. The sheriff does believe that there's more than one killer here, but right now it is too early to say if in fact these men knew their killers. No one has been arrested yet. The sheriff's department wasting no time in offering a $5,000 reward, so they are still seeking information in solving this crime.
Fox's Aisha Hosni reports. July's Fox News national polls show President Trump still trailing presumptive Democrat nominee Joe Biden by 8 points. The former VP had a 12-point lead in Fox's June poll. Coronavirus is the #1 issue for voters heading into November's election. The pandemic forced schools across the country to cancel in-person graduation ceremonies, but one college is breaking the rules.
A small conservative college in southern Michigan has defied warnings from state public health officials during the coronavirus pandemic by hosting an in-person graduation ceremony. Hillsdale College held graduation Saturday. The college of about 1,500 students had expected more than 2,000 people at the event. Those school officials declined to discuss actual attendance numbers. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel had called the gathering illegal at a time when public gatherings are capped at only 100 people. Officials also complained it put the local community at risk. Mary Corsetti, Fox News.
Golf legend Jack Nicklaus says he and wife Barbara tested positive for the coronavirus at the beginning of the pandemic, but rode it out at home in Florida. I'm Sal Giangrasso, and this is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is also brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I'm going to start the program out today on this extremely short week, which the Real Joe Cruz and I are going to have to endure because we're just going to get started on our favorite day of the week, Monday. We love Mondays because that means we got 5 whole days of tall tales ahead of us. But it's not going to work that way this week because there's no tall tales tomorrow. Instead, we're going to be celebrating the liberation of Guam on July 21, 1944, when a couple of 3rd Marine Division and the 1st Marine Provisional Brigade and the 77th Army Division landed on Guam to take it away from the Japanese. And in the process of doing that, 1,548 Marines paid the supreme sacrifice. And you might recall back, let's see, I guess it was 2004 that the highway that we also refer to as Route 1 was renamed Marine Corps Drive by an executive order from Governor Felix Camacho. The thinking was that a lot of young folks thought the reason that the name of Route 1 was Marine Drive was because of its proximity to the ocean, forgetting the fact that it was dedicated, that the name of the highway was dedicated to those Marines who made the supreme sacrifice. So in recognition of that, the name of the road was changed from Marine Drive to Marine Corps Drive, a name which is surprisingly really caught on. Every once in a while, I find some inadvertent reactionary who would refer to the street as Marine Drive, causing me to ask, where's that? I don't know where Marine Drive is. I know where Marine Corps Drive is. Okay, so tomorrow's Liberation Day, no tall tales. We're all just going to have to suffer through it, and we'll be back on Wednesday to finish up what's left of the rest of the week. I have some Second Amendment material today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the McCloskeys. You'll recall the McCloskeys were a couple of citizens living in St. Louis, Missouri, who were accosted by some Black Lives Matter protesters, and I'm putting that in quotation marks. That's a little hard to tell the protesters from the arsonists, and the looters, and the anarchists. But Tom Knighton, who writes Bearing Arms, thinks that the McCloskeys aren't getting a fair shake either from the St. Louis District Attorney, who the next day after the Black Lives Matter folks surrounded the house, and Mr. and Mrs. McCloskey stood out in front of their house. Mr. McCloskey had a AR-15, Mrs. had a handgun, and told the folks, this is private property. You can't come in here. So the St. Louis District Attorney issued a search warrant, and the cops came in the next day and seized the AR-15. And last time I talked about this, I mentioned that the rumor was that the McCloskeys were going to be indicted. I suppose the crime that they had committed was not going along with the narrative propounded by the left that Black Lives Matter is a peaceful demonstration. So Tom Knighton now is saying that not only are the McCloskeys not getting a fair shake from the district attorney in St. Louis, but the media ignores the reality. And this is what Tom says. The McCloskeys aren't likely to be your typical bearing arms readers. From what I've seen, they lean heavily to the left in their politics. So this dispels one of the rumors that perhaps got started here on Tall Tales. They dispels the rumor that you could be a sane person on the left, something that we hadn't recognized before. They lean heavily to the left in their politics and would probably just as soon see many of us disarmed as talk to us. However, regardless of their opinions about anything, there's right and there's wrong. Now, that's an archaic concept that is the neo-Marxists are trying to do away with. There is no right and wrong. There's oppressor and oppressed. That's all. Okay, there's right and there's wrong. Neither of those hinges on the St. Louis couple's personal politics, nor does my view of the abominable treatment they've received not just from their local government, but from the media. Take this editorial from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Quote, the McCloskey Barefoot Armed Porch Gang is expanding into a national political movement now that President Donald Trump, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, and Governor Mike Parson have joined this circus of absurdity and insanity. A simple navigational mistake by protesters targeting the nearby house of St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson on June 28 escalated into a major issue of gun rights versus free speech after the group spilled onto a private central West End street and were confronted by gun-waving mansion. Now that's pretty good, huh? Mansion owners.
That's right, sir.
Yeah.
Big mansion.
Mansion owners. So immediately, these cannot be good people.
Oh, of course not.
They own a mansion.
It's a big mansion.
Yeah. And we look for these things, these not so subtle clues that the reporter is not the objective journalist that he would have you think he is. They were confronted by gun-waving mansion owners, Mark and Patricia McCloskey. The greatest danger the McCloskeys faced during their brief encounter was from each other, as they wildly aimed their firearms and exercised minimum trigger finger discipline. At one point, pistol-wielding Patricia, that's a pretty good name, Patricia-wielding Patricia McCloskey walked right in front of her husband's assault rifle muzzle. At various other points, he aimed his rifle directly at her upper torso and head. Well, maybe there's a subplot to this story. At no point in the video footage did protesters appear to step on McCloskey's property, keeping a distance of 25 to 30 feet from the mansion. That's the quote from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And then back to Tom Knighton's post here. This, of course, ignores the reality on the ground that prompted the McCloskeys to get those firearms in the first place. To start with, they were on private property. A gate was destroyed to allow these individuals to gain access to that private property. It was a private street, even, meaning they were trespassing from the start. Now, we don't know how true that is or not, but the claim is completely missing. Further, when the McCloskeys came out, they claim they were threatened by some of the first few to step onto their property. Now, we don't know how true that is or not, but that claim is completely missing from the Post-Dispatch editorial. That's an important bit of context that should have been included, but it's not. Sure, the McCloskeys were apparently not in any actual danger, except from their poor weapons handling, but did they know that at the time? Would a reasonable person who knew of violent protests all over the country, faced with a trespassing mob, who had already committed acts of vandalism to gain access to the property, and threats from members of that mob feel like their life was endangered? Oh, you better believe it. We could correct that sentence, couldn't we, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
How would we correct it?
You better Hong Kong believe it.
That's it. Makes it a whole lot more serious. Yet many in the media simply don't want you to have that all-important context, because then you might not view the McCluskeys in the right light. They simply must advance the narrative and damn anything that gets in the way, even facts. You see, while I may determine right and wrong on an objective basis, it seems folks at the Post-Dispatch only view what can help the narrative as right, and anything working against that narrative as wrong. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the state of American journalism. Not exactly an exaggeration, is it? Okay, so let's go from there to Zemi Ikotny. Okay, so we have a special to the USA Today. This is from Avery Ofoji, Victor Agbaji, Dr. Howard P. Foreman, and Dr. Cecilia L. Calhoun. Special to USA Today. Of course, it's not a local editorial. I suppose I should...
Sure, sir?
Say again?
It's not local?
It's not local.
You didn't say Akfazi?
No, I said Agbafi.
Oh, Agbafi.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Akfazi.
Yeah. No, it'd be nice if it were Akfazi. So
sir.
maybe one of these days I should just learn and quit kvetching about the fact that the Daily News is not going to run local editorials, because obviously they're not. But there's some interesting stuff in this one, and I want to spend a little time with it. The disproportionate impact of Wuhan virus on black people, coupled with the harrowing effects of police brutality, has once again laid bare institutional racism in America. Now, this sounds like Gannett News Service. In medicine, structural and social detriments of health in the black community and gross injustices in health policy have produced inequities that are woven into the fabric of our society. As members of the medical community, students, clinicians, and educators, we must challenge this reality to further honor the Hippocratic Oath and begin to deliver on the promise of liberty and justice for all. They're using all the right words. Liberty, justice, police brutality, institutional racism. So you know they got to be right. Going on, bolstering medical and research fields with black leaders is a pivotal first step in improving black health disparities. So first of all, bolstering medical and research fields with black leaders is a pivotal first step in improving black health disparities. So black medical and researchers are going to be better than white researchers. And it has to be that way to put an end to racism. Okay, then we go on. If we can activate an expansive network of black healthcare leaders and pay health disparities the attention they require, black patients will likely show greater trust in their care and better outcomes too. Investment in rigorous academic research that focuses on black health is vital. Black people make up 13% of the U.S. population, but only 4% of doctors. So that's a pretty easy one, right? This is even worse for black men, the only demographic whose representation in medicine has dropped since 1978. As our national shortage of doctors worsens, especially in minority communities, it's crucial that medical schools and residencies prioritize training underrepresented students through targeted programs so that the physician workforce better represents the people it serves. Research funding for medical schools should be contingent upon specific investments in underrepresented medical students. Research funding. Now, the product of the research funding, what actually the research uncovers, is not as important as who does the researching, apparently. Going on. Further, Medicare should update the funding mechanism for graduate medical education based on the 2012 Institute of Medicine recommendations, which incentivize performance-oriented toward health equity, particularly in underserved areas. To mitigate health disparities, we must empower black people with confidence to navigate our care system through health literacy-based interventions. This approach must address black distrust of the medical field, which stems from a history of deliberate discrimination ranging from eugenics. Now, that would be Planned Parenthood, wouldn't it? Eugenics, Jose? That would be Planned Parenthood when you're talking.
So.
Yeah, eugenics. Exploratory surgery without anesthesia, forced sterilization, and other broadly unethical experiments on the black body. Today, implicit and explicit bias are pervasive in healthcare and impact outcomes and outcomes. As a result, discriminatory care has become a measurable and inherent element of healthcare delivery. This creates a tension in which lack of access is exacerbated by distrust and self-advocacy is dampened by bias. So, when I read this, I thought we really made a mistake, or we didn't. The United States Supreme Court, under the leadership of Earl Warren, really made a mistake when they decided Brown versus Board of Education. It's a little Law and Order notebooks. You got a Law and Order notebook there? Yeah. In 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court decided a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. Mr. Plessy got on a train in Louisiana, and Louisiana had come up with a new law that says one car is for black people, one car is for white people. And Mr. Plessy got in the white people's car, and he was not allowed on the car, so he brought suit. We got all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court said, well, you could separate the races so long as the accommodations are equal, separate but equal. And that was the law of the land up until 1954, when Brown versus Board of Education came along and said the mere separating of the of the races produces an unequal result. We can't have separation of the races. But it looks like that's what we really want nowadays. We should have black medical care, black doctors, black hospitals, etc. So maybe a group of lawyers ought to get together and ask if Brown can be overruled so that we could go back to separate but equal and put a lot of emphasis on the equal, because obviously the separate is really important nowadays. Where's my horn, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing you kind of got to be on your toes about there. Half the program is
It's the horn?
Facetious comments, Okay, so then we go to the Post. Was the vote to proceed with the primary election the right thing to do in this pandemic? The last time we, the Guam voters, went to the polls to choose our 15 senators, we elected them in the hope they would do the right thing for the public, first and foremost. Oh, I don't know. That's a mouthful. We elected them in the hope they would do the right thing for the public. I think it was more like we hoped that they wouldn't do too many wrong things to the public. You know, like the Juan Pat 10, you know, back in November 2014, where they got together. Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio called them together for a special session, sent a bill over that gave abundance of pay raises, including a $25,000 a year for senators, retroactive to the beginning of the term, and they passed it in a little over an hour, sent it to the lieutenant governor, who signed it when he got it, all in one day, under the leadership of former Speaker Judy Wonpat. That's why those folks were called the Wonpat 10. So after that, 7 senators were turned out. It was a real turn the rascals out movement, and that's how some of those members who are in now, they didn't get in because of their policy-oriented speeches, their good looks, their personalities. They got in because of public disgust with the Wonpat 10. So after that, I think voters, rather than hoping that senators would do the best for them, kind of turned that around a little bit and hoped that they wouldn't do too many bad things. Not the best things for the people, but eliminate the bad things to the people. Okay, next sentence. We didn't elect them to make decisions that would be favorable to their partisan friends and associates. Yet while we're still not out of the woods in this pandemic, we saw last week that 10 of the 15 senators took a stand that it's okay for the Guam Election Commission to deploy hundreds of poll workers to the polling precincts and at Election Central to conduct the primary election of August 29. Their vote, giving the primary election the green light, also signaled that it's okay for thousands of voters to congregate in polling places on primary election day. Some of these senators have argued there is a way to proceed with the election by implementing safeguards to avoid the spread of the Wuhan virus. A few days before senators voted in favor of holding, no, it's not that they voted, come on, Post. They didn't vote in favor of holding the primary election. The primary election was all set to go. There was a bill that would have canceled it. So you got to be careful here with your language. Here's what the Post said. A few days before senators voted in favor of holding the primary, Department of Public Health and Social Services infectious disease control expert Chima Mbakwam testified that making this primary election safe for everyone will involve a lot of logistics and personal responsibility. Where are my pearls? Have you seen my pearls, you guys?
No, sir.
It's just an instinctive reaction for me to read a sentence like that and start clutching my pearls. All right, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price at participating locations. Subway. Eat fresh.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. That's 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Sitting here, Rujo Cruz, I can see many horizons.
You can, sir.
Yeah. One of which is Horizon Realty.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, now this next sentence, this is a winner. This is one that I ought to have printed and made into a plaque and hang on the wall so I never forget it. This is from Mr. Well, I shouldn't say Mr. It's from Mabakwam. And I can tell you what they said, okay? Here's what they said. It's a quote. The public health recommendation at the end of the day will be safety first for the island than just having an election.
Wow.
Yeah, just having an election. Just, just do it. Just shut up and do it. And, it's just a little piece of dirt. I mean, the word just used in that context is a tool that you use to minimize the effect of the words following, right? Yeah. It's just, Luis Munoz just made a small mistake. It was just a little mistake. And it was just a genuine mistake. So public health recommendation of the day will be safety first for the island and just having an election. You could do that anytime. Do you really need to do that? So I don't want any more guidance from them, from this Mbagakim or whatever their name is, because this dispenses with the really important question here. And I tried to make this case with Ken, but I wasn't able to make much headway. But of course, on Tall Tales, everyone has an absolute right to be wrong. So on the one hand, we have these arguments that that not having the primary would save several $1,000s, and not having the primary would mean that large gatherings of people could be avoided and allay the contagion of the virus. That I will concede to. I'll stipulate to that. But just having an election is not important. And until someone is able to come along and give me a good balancing test under what circumstance we should cancel an election after we know who the candidates are. I'm not talking about, an example. I'm talking about a good balancing test. How many thousands of dollars do you have to save, etc. I continue to maintain the position that elections are sacred in a democracy, and that you only change the time and date of an election for good cause shown, and you never do it after the candidates have been identified. If we'd have been having this conversation a month ago, I could have seen the argument about money and Wuhan virus. But after we've gone through the process, identified who the candidates are, what their position on the ballot is going to be, and then come along and say, public health recommendation at the end of the day will be safety first for the island than just having an election. So it's kind of like just having an election or a birthday party or a roller skating derby or a scrub basketball game. These are things that we could easily do without. Okay, going on with the article here, or the editorial. There's a reason the GEC continues to see a lack of interest in people raising their hands to be precinct officials during this primary election for a $350 stipend for a day's work. Some have found that in this pandemic, many of the activities we have been accustomed to no longer make sense because of the risk of being exposed to Wuhan virus and other diseases that are spread person to person. Well, good, then we better cancel the general election because we won't be able to get poll workers to work for $350 a day. Cancel that. Our local government has continued to prohibit organized sporting events, even outdoors. And our Manamku still cannot congregate as senior citizen centers. We understand that these restrictions are meant to keep the virus that causes Wuhan virus from spreading in our community. If this is how our government feels, now I didn't know governments could feel. Did you, Real Joe Cruz?
Lately, they've had a lot of feelings, sir.
Yeah. I expect a whole lot more from my government. I expect things like a thought process, analysis, hypothetical weighing of results. I don't want a government that feels. If this is how our government feels about outdoor sports, why then is it okay for poll workers, voters, and campaigners to congregate on August 29? This is what's called a rhetorical question. It's stated in the form of a question, but it's meant to be a statement. And the reason for that is, Guam Daily Post, that outdoor sports is not an essential element of a democratic society. Elections are. Senators approved another measure that would allow all voters to cast their votes at the Guam Election Commission through absentee voting anytime within 30 days of the primary election. This action, hopefully, hopefully is an adverb, Guam Daily Post. This action hopefully will reduce crowding at the polling places. But it's not a guarantee that the majority of our voters will vote in advance at the GEC offices. Now, a lot of this goes to the logistics aspect that Mabakum thinks is so critical, because we tried this in 2010. We tried to have what was called early voting. And we opened the polls down at the Guam Election Commission 8 to 5, at least 30 days before the election. And I thought, well, I'll go down there and do that. But what they had was the same setup that they use for standard absentee voting, where you come in, you have to fill out a paper, you have to have a good reason. There aren't that many people that vote absentee. But the day I went out down there were 50 people in line. So if they're going to do it that way, it's not going to work. This is another inspiration of, what's that senator's name? Her last name is Titano. What's her first name, Real Joe Cruz?
Karen, sir?
Yeah, Karen Marsh Titano. The guardian of the trails. Okay. Are the risks of Wuhan virus spread worth taking? Absolutely not. We should never have any more elections. We should flip coins, roll dice, draw straws, junk and Poe, There are all kinds of things we could do instead of having elections, right? Another rhetorical question, a couple more rhetorical questions. Is an absolute necessity to go to the polls to end the race for just a few mayors and a Democratic congressional candidate? Yes, absolutely. You know, it wouldn't have been if our senators, and this is where you should be on their tails, Guam Daily Post. If they had been doing this a month ago, they'd had an argument. But you can't wait until all of the candidates' names are out there and ballot positions have been assigned. And then the final question, the punchline. Did the 10 senators make the right call? Yes, they did. Does the Guam Daily Post get a blue star? No, it doesn't. And it doesn't, not because I fault their theory. It doesn't because they haven't weighed the alternative considerations leading up to their position. They're doing the same thing that they're criticizing the legislature for. They're looking at some of the facts and making a snap decision without taking into consideration all of the variables involved. So no blue star for you today, Guam Daily Post. I've explained before, you can take a position that I disagree with and still get a blue star. Using phrases like "if the government feels" don't work very well, though, when it comes to getting blue stars. That's like talking in terms of when a person goes to the polls, they should wear a mask. We don't say stuff like that on Tall Tales, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's go to the card. So I've got Troy versus Janela. It's been 61 days since Crystal Paco explained that when Janela reporters at the governor's press conference, it wasn't her fault because Carlo Branch had told Janela to do the Janela-ing. When Carlo Branch apologized, it wasn't necessary for Janela to apologize. But Crystal assured us that Janela would never Janela anyone in the future. So for those of you who haven't been listening regularly, the verb Janela means that when you are sitting at a, what's the name of that conference?
Zoom?
Yeah, when you are moderating a Zoom conference and you mute the microphone of a reporter and for a while, then turn it back on and then cut the reporter off in mid-session, in mid-speech. That's called Janela-ing. That's what it means to Janela somebody. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir. And the lieutenant governor said that Janela was just joshing. So they pulled a branch on us.
Where's that horn, Real? You better blow the horn on yourself. Yeah. The lieutenant governor said, Janela, you better apologize. But we all know he was just joshing. All right. So it's been 14 days since Tina has detected a danger to the public health or safety of such a nature that she had to call the legislature into session and suspend the necessity of public hearings for bills before the legislature. 14 whole days. Tina is kind of our canary in the coal mine when it comes to finding these dangers to public health and safety. And for Luis Muña, let's see, I think it's been, my count is a little bit screwed up here. I think it's been about 20 days since Luis Muña made a mistake that she had to had to clarify for us by telling us that, well, yes, I made a mistake, but it was a genuine mistake. I applied for unemployment insurance because I'd lost my gig jobs, and I didn't mention the $55,000 a year that I'm paid as a senator. Well, you know, the reason why was I thought you had to get paid for working, and obviously I don't work at the legislature, so I thought it was okay. Where's that horn, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. All right. So that's the big three here on the card. And then from there we go to hagiography versus reality. Hagiography. You know what hagiography means, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm about to, sir.
Yeah.
Tell me, sir.
Hagiography, the study of people for sainthoods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for sainthood, or to really put them up on a pedestal, right? So this is an article from the Post. Chamorro Women's Group calls for former CLTC chairwoman's reinstatement. A group promoting and supporting Chamorro women, well, you know that this is valid, right? Has penned a letter to Governor Lilian Guerrero requesting that she reinstate Pica Ferran to the Guam Land Trust Commission. Ferran's term expired in April. Rather than reappoint the commissioner, Leon Guerrero nominated Lucia Lagos to take her place. Ferran's last meeting with the CLTC was last week. Here's the letter. It was with great disappointment that we received news of the end of Pica Ferran's term on the CLT Commission. Through her leadership, the CLT Commission began a steady recovery after years of mishandling and repaired our faith in a government organization that was created to remedy the effects of land disposition and colonialism. Well, only two bad mistakes there. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission was not created to remedy the effects of land disposition and colonialism. I remember when it passed in 1975. It was a Paul Berdallo bill. The bill is still in the archives. You don't have the long, self-serving statement of legislative findings, etc. But the purpose of the Chamorro Land Trust, as I remember it, was that was to make sure that no matter what happened on Guam, there would always be land, real property, lived on by Chamorros. So the Chamorro Land Trust Act did not call for, what it called for was taking all the government of Guam property and deciding which parts of government Guam property had to be held on to because they were essential for the government to function. And all the rest of the land was to be separated out and called available lands. And the available lands were to be given to people of Chamorro ancestry, Chamorro. Nobody made any bones about it when that bill passed. So the idea was that not to sell any of that land, but to give it to Chamorros for 99-year leases. That way, 99 years from now, there would still be, no matter what happened on the island, no matter how many Tosanidung moved in, or Chinu, or Japanese, or whatever, there would always be land held by Chamorros. That was the purpose of the Land Trust Act. And that was really demonstrated a few years ago when BJ introduced a bill requiring the Land Trust Commission to convey title to those leaseholders, to all those leaseholds in fee simple. And the separatists went through the roof. Well, you can't do that. That destroys the purpose of the land trust. It's to keep the land under the control of Chamorros. There was no mention of land condemned by the United States or anything like that. And the word colonialism, in fact, in 1975, I think if we use the word colonialism, it was in the context of the American Revolution. It wasn't on the tip of everybody's tongue in those days. Okay, let's take a short break, and we'll come back for a few minutes and then the halftime show.
$5 foot long, piled high with veggies.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They're open in Agotnya for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them now, 479-2652, and get your Mescla fix today.
So here we are back again, Tall Tales. We got about 7 more minutes till that big halftime show. So I have a copy of the July 16 letter from Ihagan Famalawan Guahan to the governor. And I saw the valedictory that Pika Fairand presented to the Land Trust Commission, and there's an amazing similarity between the two, almost as though they had the same author, but I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that. So here's how the letter goes. Buenas Zanhafide, Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. Ihagan Famalawan Guahan resides on the mission, quote, to enhance, promote, protect, and foster the social, economic, cultural, spiritual, and political well-being of Chamorro women, girls, and gender-diverse people. Chamorro gender-diverse people, Chamorro girls, and Chamorro women. But apparently not Chamorro fetuses, right, Jose? Yeah, because the statistics show that of the back when we were still doing abortions, like 60% of the abortions were performed on Chamorros, the highest rate of any group on the island. That was before the 2 abortionists moved away, and Governor Leon Guerrero had to face that first emergency of her administration. We went something like 7 months without a reported abortion, and she had to take dramatic action in the face of those numbers. 7 months and no reported abortions. She had to appoint Jane Flores to go out and find an abortionist. Well, fortunately for us and the unborn children who were conceived after that, Jane was not able to find an abortionist. Okay, so anyhow, back here, the Hagan Famalawan Guan the mission is to enhance, promote, protect, foster the social, economic, cultural, spiritual, and political well-being of Chamorro women, girls, and gender-diverse people. Now, I wonder, this is not really very good wording. Does Chamorro modify girls and gender-diverse people? Or is the purpose of the group to enhance, promote, etc., Chamorro women, and then girls, and then also gender-diverse people? It's kind of hard to say. I think I know, though. Crucial to our mission is the return and protection of Chamorro lands. Our survival and ability to thrive as an indigenous people is dependent upon our relationship with Itanota. So, Jan Gentio and Tungu Finu Tsumuro, I Palabran Itanota means our land. The health of the Chamorro Land Trust is integral to our work. Well, I got to tell you something, folks. The Chamorro Land Trust is not going to return land to anybody. Remember, it's a 99-year leasehold. Going on, it was with great disappointment that we received news of the end of Pika Farran's term on the CLT Commission. Through her leadership, the Commission began a steady recovery of mishandling and repaired our faith in government organization that was created to remedy the effects of land possession and colonialism. Once again, if you keep saying the same incorrect facts often enough, people are going to start to believe it. But Pika Farran was chairman for 4 years. So when she was the chairman, a lot of really bad things happened, including the whole Barragata Heights scandal, where a sitting senator was able to swap places in line with someone older and wind up with a piece of real property that cost maybe $1 million or something like that. Remember all of that? This was an example of the Pika Farran suzerainty over the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So all of the things that happened during the time that she was chairman, and they began during the time she was chairman. And that is not something that you could take a lot of credit for. There was a time when it was very hard for a citizen to get his hands on a law book. You had to go down to the law library, and it wasn't easy. But nowadays, anybody with a phone. Now let's take a break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to Pika Farran and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A deadly shooting at a federal judge's home. I'm Salchi Ingrasso, Fox News. A gunman shot and killed the 20-year-old son of federal judge Esther Salas and shot and injured her husband Sunday at the family home in North Brunswick, New Jersey. The judge escaped the violence. She was in her basement when the shooting began. A man posing as a delivery man shot and killed her son, Daniel Adderall, and wounded her defense lawyer husband, Mark Adderall. The latest Fox News poll shows coronavirus is the #1 issue for voters heading into November's election. During an interview with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday, President Trump discussed his administration's response to the pandemic.
We'll put out the flames, and we'll put out, in some cases, just burning embers. We also have burning embers. We have embers, and we do have flames. Florida became more flame-like, but it's going to be under control.
Also in that interview, President Trump continued to call for schools to reopen this fall.
Probably the most pressing issue, though, the Trump administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, what are parents and students going to do with schools when they open in about a month? Many are in limbo with not a clue about how they're going to handle school. The president wants to open schools full steam ahead, despite concerns from the medical community.
When they don't open their schools, we're not going to fund them. We're not going to give them money if they're not going to school, if they don't open their schools.
2 points on that. First of all, what the federal government gives is 8%.
10%, and you know what? That's a lot of money.
And you're going to take them. You know where the money goes? It goes overwhelmingly to disadvantaged kids and children with disabilities.
Let the schools...
Why wouldn't you just send more money so the schools would be safer?
Let the schools open.
Fox's David Spunt reporting. Top Republicans in Congress expected to meet today with President Trump on the next COVID-19 aid package. The administration is opposing more testing money. House Democrats already passed a sweeping $3 trillion measure. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
A new Fox News poll shows presumptive Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden still preferred over the president.
The numbers show Biden with a 49 to 41% lead, slightly below the 12-point margin the month prior. Each has a set of stronger demographics. President Trump is favored by men, rural voters, and overwhelmingly by white evangelicals. Biden leads big with blacks, women, and millennials. Biden adds a slight advantage with independents. While voters say Biden would do a better job on race and fighting COVID-19, Biden also slightly outpoints the president on handling the economy, 44 to 43%, within the margin of error. Also on coronavirus, 7 in 10 say they would favor a national order to mandate mask wearing during the pandemic. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
A man remains jailed after being charged in a fatal crash in Central Texas that killed 3 people and injured 9 others. Police say he was intoxicated when his vehicle crossed a highway center strip and crashed into members of a motorcycle club. An updated timetable is now in place for the trial of a world leader.
Witness testimony in the corruption trial of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now set for January. That word Sunday from an Israeli court. Netanyahu's lawyers requesting a 6-month postponement to prepare their case, while also saying they think it would be difficult to judge the truthfulness of witnesses wearing masks to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Netanyahu facing charges of accepting gifts from rich friends and for allegedly seeking regulatory favors for media tycoons in return for favorable press coverage. Paul Stevens, Fox News.
Golfing great Jack Nicklaus says he and wife Barbara tested positive for the coronavirus at the start of the pandemic. Nicklaus says they stayed at home in Florida from about March 13th until they were done with it on April 20th. Asian stock markets ended mixed. U.S. stock futures trading lower overseas. I'm Sal Giangrasso, and this is Fox News.
Chili's introduces the new crispy ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your crispy ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with 1 of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's crispy ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumont Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
GRMC's Neuroscience and Neurology Department treats a wide spectrum of disorders associated with the nervous system, spine, and brain. Some of the more common disorders include seizures, epilepsy, dementia, sleep disorders, migraine, and stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC's neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and the finest neurological doctors. To make an appointment, contact GRMC Specialty Clinics at 645-5500.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, back again, Tall Tales, after that super great halftime show that we've all come to enjoy so much. That means I'm in the second half of Tall Tales, less than an hour of Tall Tales left, and then we go into a drought. There'll be no Tall Tales tomorrow. I'm very unhappy to say. So I was working on that part of the card called Hagiography versus Reality. And the hagiography refers to a group called Ihagan Famalawan Guahan, whose mission is to enhance, promote, protect, foster the social, economic, cultural, spiritual, and political well-being of Chamorro women, girls, and gender diverse persons. It's their hagiographic note to the governor saying, boy, it would be nice if you would appoint Pika Farron to the Land Trust Commission. So, and of course, this is the typical propaganda screed coming from groups that I have labeled separatist. All those groups, the Finogi Gang, that want Guam to separate from the United States and become an independent country. So the Hagan Famalawan Guahan go on to say, the unlawful acquisition of ancestral land by the United States Navy and federal government. Now, what unlawful acquisition are we talking about, I wonder? It's so easy to toss that around without anyone ever coming up with proofs. Now, I know that from 1950 on, there were an abundance of condemnation cases filed with the District Court of Guam, a federal court, a court put here by the national government. And we have a provision in the United States Constitution that deals with eminent domain, with the taking of the property by eminent domain. And this is what it says. Let's see. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So this is not a grant of authority to the national government to take private property for public use, but says if you do it, you have to pay just compensation. So the United States government condemned a fair amount of land, a lot of land, beginning in 1950, and paid was at the time just compensation. Now, with the magic of presentism means that we take today's morals, values, standards, etc., and apply that to people in the past. And if they didn't measure up to today's standards, then we have to cancel them because they were really bad people. So George Washington was a really bad person because he didn't live up to today's standards. Now, as far as condemnation of real property is concerned, presentism means, well, yeah, they took my great-grandfather's property in Petey. It was 1 hectare, and they only gave him $3,000 for him. That land is worth $300,000 today. Well, yeah, probably is. When the United States takes real property, it pays just compensation, which means how much was the land worth at the time it was taken. So it may be that the Hagan Famalawan Guahan organization didn't like the condemnation process, didn't like to have that land condemned. And this is the case quite often. It's a controversial thing that the government does, but it is seen as in the public interest. That's why it's mentioned in the Constitution. But the fact that you don't like something doesn't make it illegal. I don't like not being able to come into Tall Tales tomorrow and do a show. I don't like that at all. But that doesn't mean that not having Tall Tales tomorrow is a violation of the law. Maybe it should be, but where's that? Yeah. The the unlawful acquisition of ancestral land. Now, what is ancestral land? Land owned by your ancestors? By the United States Navy and federal government has and continues to be a hindrance to our people in all aspects of life. Despite suffering from the highest rates of poverty, incarceration, violence, and illness, highest compared to what? Chamorro families continue to resist the consequences of a colonial system that took away our most sacred resource, land. Once again, the word colonialism. In 1975, when the Chamorro Land Trust was enacted, no one, no matter how bad a person was, he was never condemned with the worst thing that you could call him nowadays, a colonizer. You remember the Hope Kostroval, Paul Zerzan chat, the
Kostroval kerfuffle?
The Kostroval. She really laid it out on him. You are a colonizer. Oh my God.
Slow murder, sir. Slow murder.
You are a colonizer. I could just imagine what was going through Paul's head, at the time. Gosh, I hope my mother and father don't find out about this. They'll be mortified. But in 1975, people didn't go around condemning one another for being colonizers. And you almost never heard the word colony except in the context of the American Revolution. So this is all the kind, this is the classic example of rewriting history to fit your narrative. So despite suffering from the highest rates of poverty, incarceration, violence, and illness, Chamorro families continue to resist. Well, the highest rates where? Probably on Guam, because most of the people are Chamorros. The majority of the people are Chamorros. The Chamorro Land Trust was established to correct the wrongs of this colonial history by returning land to qualified beneficiaries for residential and agricultural uses. No, it was designed to take land that had been government of Guam land and give it as 99-year leases to Chamorros. That was the purpose of it. Now, they go on to say, we emphasize that prior to Fairand's arrival, CLT lands had been leased at rates below fair market value and for purposes not authorized by Guam law. Well, that would mean that, and I haven't read anything about that yet. When Fairand found out about these things, what did she do about it? The loss of CLT lands for unintended purposes greatly undermines efforts to remedy the effects of land dispossession and colonialism. We talk about staying on message, I think the rule for Ihagan, Famalau, and Guahan is that every sentence must contain the word colonialism. If it doesn't, it gets blue penciled right out of the letter. The loss of CLT lands is tantamount to the loss of our self-determination. The loss of our self-determination. The loss of CLT lands is tantamount to the loss of our self-determination. Now, that's a real mouthful. I thought that this outfit and the other separatists are complaining that they haven't had the ability for self-determination. It's going on. Under Pika Fairand's leadership, the CLT Commission prevented lands from being misused for unlawful purposes, preserving them for Chamorro families to one day build homes and become self-sustaining. Fairand also prevented 2,877 beneficiaries from having their leases voided. And the reason for that The reason for that was because during Farrand's tenure, the executive director of the Chamorro Land Trust was signing leases when the law clearly states it has to be the chairman. So during her time, the director of land management was signing leases. Even the deputy director was signing leases. Where was Pika Farrand when all this was going on? And I started to explain before the halftime break that there was a time when maybe you could say, well, people on boards and commissions, have a hard time really knowing what the law is. But not anymore. You can get out your phone and you can go straight to the Guam Code Annotated. And you can go to the law, you can go to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and you can find out everything you need to know right there in about 20 minutes of reading. So wouldn't you think that anyone who is appointed to any board or commission, before he even, before they even start, would take a look at their organic statute and see what's going on? And wouldn't you think that this Saint Pika Farrand wouldn't have noticed, hey, the chairman I'm supposed to be signing all these leases. Who's been signing these leases? I got to find out about this. If I'm not signing the leases, I got to put a stop to it. And I got to do something about the leases that weren't signed by me because they're voidable. Farrand also prevented 2,877 beneficiaries from having their leases voided. Great. Furthermore, Farrand created a process to ensure the 8,000 applicants still waiting in line would not be skipped again. Now, one of the things that Farrand didn't do was something that the Land Trust Act required right after its passage. There are supposed to be rules and regulations promulgated. And a lot of the things like how the lines will be handled, how the applicants will be handled, how the leases will be let, should be included in the rules. Do you know when Pika Farrand actually had those rules promulgated, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
Never. As great as she was, there are still no rules for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And once again, a quick look at the statute would tell you, hey, we got to do this. Going on, recently she defended the trust from the Department of Justice's allegations of racial discrimination. She defended, right? Now, the newspapers and the TV stations got that all wrong, because the way they reported it, Michael Phillips was brought in as a special assistant attorney general to take on the defense of the suit brought by the Justice Department. And I don't remember Pika Farrand lifting a finger in that defense. And I do remember that Phillips and a deputy attorney general, Ken Orcutt, combined. I thought it was an amazing performance because they were able to convince the judge who was assigned to hear that case that a settlement could be worked out that would remove the invidious racial discrimination from the act. And if they could, the lawsuit wouldn't go forward. So Ken Orcutt came up with this idea that this was not a racially discriminant act along the lines that I described, to give leaseholds to Chamorros so that Chamorros will always have land on Guam. He invented this theory that the purpose of the act was to remedy the fact that land had been taken from local folks by eminent domain, and this was a way of kind of evening out the scale. So the compromise that they worked out was no more Chamorro Land Trust. No more, you have to be a Chamorro to get land. You have to be able to show that you had land that was taken by the United States by eminent domain, or that you farmed land that was taken by the United States. Nothing about Chamorros or Howleys or Germans or whatever. That was the deal that Phillips and Ken Orcutt worked out. They drafted a statute that the legislature must adopt. If the legislature adopts that statute, then the case will be dismissed. If it not, the case will go forward. You know how Pika Feheran got the legislature to pass that statute, Real Joe Cruz?
How, sir?
I don't know either. Because the legislature has done nothing with it. Not one would have thought that, you know, someone who's a candidate for sainthood would be down there pounding on the front door of the legislature every day saying, you guys, you have to pass this to save the Chamorro Land Trust. But I guess she was too busy writing her valedictory to find any time for that. Yeah, so she defended the trust from the U.S. Department of Justice's allegations of racial discrimination. Farron's knowledge and then one thing, you remember when the whole Barragata Heights thing blew up? The whole Barragata Heights, we find that Raging Lee was able to grab off a beautiful piece of view property up there because she swapped places with an older member of her family, and this was rampant. You know, when Pika Feheran found out about that, Miss Always on the Ball, who'd been on the commission for 2 years up at that time, she found out about it when she read it in the paper. So, you know, that whole kerfuffle, it became public knowledge that Michael Bora, who was the functional head administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, had signed a lease in 2 places. He signed as the director, he signed as the grantor, and he also signed as the grantee because he had a power of attorney for a relative that lived in the States. And we had another one, a land agent, who basically confessed to official misconduct on television when she told us, well, yeah, you know, my sister's old and she didn't want to do anything with the land, and my younger cousin, et cetera. So I thought maybe we could, and this is a person that deals with these things at the commission. So, I mean, all you had to do was record all these TV programs, and you could see an abundance of wrongdoing going on there. So what did Pika Feheran do? Did she bring in an outside investigator, or did she ask the Attorney General, send somebody in here and let's prosecute people that need to be prosecuted? No. They conducted their own investigation. And when the investigation was finished, she declared, we finished our investigation and no one did anything wrong. So I've been pretty critical of Lulian Guerrero up until now. If she's not replacing Pika Feheran, I'll give her credit for doing one thing right, because that was a dramatic exposition of having great opportunities to detect a problem and fix the problem. Instead, Pika Feheran did nothing except perhaps co-author her valedictory on what a wonderful job she had done as the Land Trust Commission. Well, yesterday we have this story from the Post. While Hagan Famala and Guahan, a group promoting Chamorro... Oh, wait a minute. This story is wrong. It says, while Hagan Famala and Guahan, a group promoting Chamorro women. Ooh, some people are going to get their skivvies bunched up about that. Right? Because I just read it in this letter here. Promote, protect, foster, et cetera, well-being of Chamorro women, girls, and gender-diverse people. And this news story didn't say anything at all about gender-diverse people. That's discrimination. Anyhow, if Hagan Famala and Guahan is calling for the reinstatement of former Chamorro Land Trust Commission chairwoman Pica Fejeran. Governor Lulian Guerrero said it is her prerogative as governor to appoint whomever she believes is fit for the commission. Now, you could read something into that sentence. I can appoint whoever I think is fit for the commission. So if she doesn't appoint someone, what does that mean, Real Joe Cruz?
Nothing, sir.
Couldn't it mean that she has determined that Pica Fejeran is not fit?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In communication with Pica Fejeran, I had thanked her for her work, and I'm very grateful for her past work. However, it is, of course, my prerogative to appoint whoever I think would also contribute to the goodness of the CLTC. Our commissioners that are appointed are just as capable and just as competent to move forward CLTC's mission and to make sure that we get the leases going as expeditiously as possible. Farron's term expired in April. Leon Guerrero nominated Lucia Lagos to take Farron's place. Her last meeting with the CLTC was last week. More recently, Leon Guerrero appointed John Regis to take the place of Commissioner Amanda Santos, whose term also expired. Amanda Santos, boy, you know, this is really something because Amanda Santos is the mother of Angel Santos. Yeah. Tai respeto e gobierno, nae. Okay, we got the seventh inning stretch coming up here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978, 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Okay, so here we are, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. Nobody in the stands, nobody on the field. The usual suspects here at the historic studios of The Point in Tumum. And we'll continue on with Tall Tales for another 29 minutes, and then we'll be done until Wednesday, sad to say. Next item on the card is Fisher versus Rory. And this is another one of Fisher's ventures into the world of the Sunshine Law, for which I applaud him. The more litigation we have on the Sunshine Law, the better we'll all be. Attorney Thomas Fisher filed a lawsuit on Thursday alleging a Port Authority of Guam General Manager Rory refused to disclose public records. Fisher said the documents he's seeking, which are related to the port's hiring of an attorney, or law firm should be open for inspection by members of the public based on the Sunshine Reform Act. On July 1, Fisher requested certain documents from the port. The port has not complied with the request as required, the lawsuit alleges. Fisher asked the Superior Court to issue an alternative writ of mandate ordering Respicio to release the requested documents or appear before the court and explain why he couldn't do so. The attorney also asked the court to issue a $1,000 fine against Respicio. Respicio said he has provided the documents in his possession. I responded and provided more than 60 pages of documents. Whatever documents Fisher is claiming were not provided, either those documents do not exist or are still in active procurement with the Attorney General's office. Attorney Fisher's office was sent an email with 4 working days prescribed by law. I wish Attorney Fisher would have just called the Port Authority instead of going through this extreme measure involving the courts, because I don't want to pony up $1,000, Respicio said. Fisher requested contracts, purchase orders, and payments for legal services performed at the port from January 1 to the present. The attorney also sought procurement records for legal services for the port from January 1 to the present. The port issued a request for proposals for legal services in February. The proposals were initially due March 20. The deadline was moved to April 7. The deadline was further pushed back to May 8. Other documents are with the Attorney General's office as part of an active procurement. Does that mean that Rory has decided who's going to be the port's new outside counsel, which he assured the board wasn't necessary in the January meeting? Well, we're going to follow this one as closely as we follow the tenure of Lucia Lagos at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Okay, next we have BJ versus the Post. And put it this way, if BJ has a blue pencil, I don't think that he gave the Post a blue star for their Friday editorial. And I have BJ's press release. As public auditor, I'm compelled to respond to the Guam Daily Post editorial on July 17 on the timing of our recently issued audit of the Port Authority, unclassified employees' pay raises. It casts a perception that this independent office is using its resources for political motives. Our office fully rejects the notion OPA is out to get certain political parties or candidates with our audits. Nothing could be further from the truth. I should have some music here, Real Joe Cruz.
What do you want me to sing, sir?
You know, that kind of sad one, you know. There you go. The author of this editorial either did not read the entire audit or does not have access to the archives of the Guam Daily Post. We even state in the introductory paragraph of the report the reason why this particular audit focused on PAG. Going on a little bit farther down the page. In November 2019, the OPA and the Office of the Attorney General teamed up to tackle the misuse of government funds and uphold the rule of law. In a joint press release, our offices specifically stated, "We will review the practices of government agencies to determine if they are following the laws on paying government officials. the issue and legality of certain pay raises and bonuses in the government of Guam, whether at GPA, GWA, or PAG, have been brewing for years. And the people of Guam are fed up. That's what the public auditor says. In December 2019, OPA issued Report 1909, Guam Power Authority and Guam Water Works Authority unclassified employees' pay raises and bonuses. In that report, OPA found the Consolidated Commission on Utilities did not comply with the open government law when it discussed and decided employees' salaries and bonuses during its executive meetings. The Guam Daily Post covered this report in great detail and even named it the #2 top story of 2019. That's what BJ's saying. It is stated in this report that a subsequent audit will be issued for the other agencies. The PAG unclassified employees' pay raises and bonuses audit was second in the series. The timing of our audit release and a certain political candidate being the subject of the audit is purely coincidental. It reads like that legend at the beginning of Law and Order. You know, any resemblance between actual purpose people and this story is purely, and then it's about the mayor of New York. Yeah. So when there's a reference here that this audit initially began in June 2019, and the political candidate only filed for candidacy in June 2020. Now, who was that political candidate? I think it was Joanne Brown. And not long after Joanne Brown filed her papers, BJ comes out with this audit that says she was illegally hired, which I pointed out yesterday is not, Friday, is an incorrect determination of the law, and some other irregularities with Joanne Brown's tenure at the port. Now, this may have been purely coincidental, and it may have had nothing to do with Rory Respicio, but after the audit report came out, the display of Rory's Schadenfreude was something that I had, of the magnitude I had never seen before. Rory might have changed his middle initial to S. Rory Schadenfreude Respicio. Real Joe Cruz, do you know what Schadenfreude means?
Of course, sir.
Stupid question on my part. Tell our international radio listening audience what Schadenfreude means.
Schadenfreude is pleasure derived by someone from another person's misfortune.
Yeah. I guess I was looking for a little Schadenfreude myself when I asked you if you knew what it meant, and I caught you not knowing what it meant. I could have demonstrated the meaning of the word right there, right?
True, sir.
Yeah, but Rory he just was almost giggling with glee. You know, we're going to, let's see, they were going to take back all the raises. The retirement fund was going to take back all of the retirement that Joanne had earned during her employment at the port. Someone from the port would go to Joanne's house and flatten all of her tires. I think that they were going to spray 2,4-D on her garden. Yeah. And I think they'd worked out a deal with the person that had the pre-need contract for Joanne's funeral arrangements to put something really nasty on her tombstone. Yeah. I mean, that's how Rory, you know, the current general manager of the port, took it in a rather even-handed fashion, saying, well, you know, when there are employees of the port who run into rough times, we always look out for the employees. For example, Bernadette Stern and the other members of the Port 7. We'll treat, we really have, we have too much of a soft spot for our employees. So we'll treat Joanne Brown that same way. Not. So BJ goes on to say, just a coincidence. And then a little self-laudatory language here. OPA takes extraordinary measures with every audit issued. Every word and number in our audits must be supported with evidence. We have a quality control reviewer, independent of the audit, come in and scrutinize the audit to ensure all the evidence is supported and no stone is left unturned. While we respect this opinion on doing a broad audit to encapsulate the issues and reporting them all in one report, doing that does a disservice to each respective agency, as their issues with the open government law may be similar, their circumstances are not. An auditor's responsibility is to do an independent examination and assess whether the entity is achieving economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in the use of those resources. To put it simply, the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details.
So are the angels, sir.
I suppose. The devil is in the details, and further prosecutorial action from the Office of the Attorney General, if necessary, would require each circumstance to be outlined. OPA remains committed to auditing for good governance. Let's give him a hand, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. OPA. Committed to auditing for good governance. So I suppose I am stuck right now. Should I go back and retroactively revoke the blue star that I gave to the Post?
Oh. That would be unprecedented, sir.
Well, I once upon a time went back and upgraded a non-blue star to a blue star. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I thought that the editorial was very well done. And if I were to step back and be fair and objective, like Chuck Todd pretends to be on the other Meet the Press, if I were to pretend to do that, I would say, well, the Guam Daily Post came out and made a call, and it was good that they did, because it gave the public auditor the opportunity to explain how his office works, thereby clearing the air. So I'm going to call it a draw. That's how that would be how Chuck Todd would do it, so long as there weren't any Republicans involved. Okay, next item on the card. We're just about up there for the home stretch, aren't we, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's break for the home stretch.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
$5 foot long, pile high with veggies.
They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, so here we are back home on the home stretch, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. We've got about 13 more minutes of Tall Tales. Next item on the card here is Tom Kreis versus the Unwoke. Now, if you don't know who Tom Kreis is, he is the president of the University of Guam. And he tells an interesting story showing up. It takes him a little while to get there, but he shows us that he's with the agenda. He says a film production of the Tony-winning Broadway musical Hamilton, starring Lin-Manuel Miranda as Alexander Hamilton, debuts on Disney Plus, July 3, USA Today. When we heard that a film version of Lin-Manuel Miranda's hit musical was coming to TV, my wife and I thought that would be a perfect thing to watch on the 4th of July. But after 2 hours of struggle to get signed up for Disney Plus so we could watch it, the customer service representative said, "Oh, I see now you're in Guam. We don't serve the territories." Now, residents in Guam and the other territories are used to this kind of treatment from fellow citizens on, quote, the mainland. But think about the special irony in this case. The film we wanted to watch was written, directed, and performed by a Puerto Rican. So, you know, we're going to get into some identity politics here, right? Yeah. And the subject of the program, Alexander Hamilton, was a Virgin Islander. I don't know whether Lin-Manuel Miranda knows about this exclusion of the territories from being able to watch his production, but my ears pricked up when I heard the language he used to describe his Puerto Rican heritage in an interview with Terry Gross on NPR's Fresh Air this month. Well, you're listening to NPR instead of Fox News? Instead of The Point? You're liable to hear anything over there, Dr. Tom Kreis. He described Hamilton as an immigrant narrative, and he said of himself that he grew up in an immigrant community. Terry Gross remarked, "I think for anyone who is a child or a grandchild of immigrants, there's always this question of, like, how did they get the courage to leave? Or were they forced to leave and then come to America?" To which Miranda replied, "Yeah, well, listen, my dad had it better than most. My dad came here on a scholarship. He was a protege. He had graduated from the University of Puerto Rico by the time he was 18 years old." Wow, God, that smart could be a talk show host. "Because he had skipped grades and he got a scholarship to NYU. A part of me is always in awe of the immigrant experience. I'm a living testament and beneficiary of my dad on my dad's side and my grandparents on my mom's side coming to this country and making a better life for themselves. The problem is people from Puerto Rico and the other territories are Americans. They are not immigrants." So then Kreis goes on to say, "Now that these two well-informed people, Terry Gross and Lin-Manuel Miranda, can carry on a fairly long conversation in in which they make the people of the largest and most populous territory of the United States into foreigners without catching themselves tells us something about our collective colonial state of mind. Here it comes, right? It took a while. No, it doesn't tell us anything about our colonial state of minds. It tells us that Terry Gross and Lin-Manuel Miranda are idiots, is what it tells us. And no one should pay any attention to what they say. If our most educated celebrities, which is almost a contradiction in terms, if you see who passes off as celebrities nowadays, can overlook the, now here we are again, overlook the inequality thrust upon those living in territories fully controlled by the United States. Now, is the inequality that he's talking about the fact that he couldn't watch the TV program he didn't want to watch? That's pretty serious. If our most educated celebrities can overlook the inequality thrust upon those living in the territories fully controlled by the United States, how likely is it the average citizen realizes they are tacitly endorsing the unequal status quo? This reminds me of comedian John Oliver's show in 2015 when Sonia Sotomayor was appointed to the Supreme Court. He showed video clips of multiple news anchors announcing that Sotomayor was the daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants. And she's a first-generation American, the daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants. John Oliver's response, no, she isn't. She's the daughter of Americans who moved from Puerto Rico. Once again, it shows you the stupidity of people who have convinced us they're smart because they're properly dressed, they're on TV every night, talking into a microphone, saying things that they read off the teleprompter that they probably don't even know the meaning of. So they're dumb people, basically, is what they are. And here's my analysis. Dumb people are capable of saying dumb things. Surprise, surprise. During our country's long history of having both states and territories, did we say that citizens who moved from New Mexico or Tennessee or Oregon to New York or Pennsylvania were immigrants? If not, then what's the difference with our remaining 5 territories? And here it comes again now, you know, more carefully concealed than most of the identity politics that you run into. But here it is. If not, what's the difference between our remaining 5 territories? One thing they share that sets them apart is that they are all minority-majority populations. We've got to play the identity politics game instead of just calling dumb people, which might hurt their feelings. Together with D.C., they are the only minority-majority jurisdictions in the U.S. And then the subheading, time to make a change. As the Black Lives Matter movement encourage us to think harder about how we treat each other and to take neo-Marxism as a really serious improvement on our lives. Yeah, because that's what it does. It would behoove us to remember the persisting disenfranchisement, taxation without representation, and linguistic othering of our fellow Americans in D.C. Now, how do we linguistically other folks in D.C.? Every time I went to the District of Columbia, I was able to get along pretty well in English, right up until the time that I took a cab. Yeah. So, you know, this I've mentioned this before, but, you know, people come to the United States from other countries, and it used to be that they would come here because they wanted to live in America and they wanted to be Americans. But now we've got the president of a university saying that where is it? Oh, yeah. Taxation, the persisting disenfranchisement. Well, people in D.C. don't have representatives in Congress. They do in the Electoral College. And taxation without representation. Well, they've got some representation, but they do pay taxes. And linguistic othering of our fellow Americans in D.C. and the 5 remaining territories. Well, this is a really deceptive sentence. And given that the guy's the president of the university and probably pretty skilled at putting together his propaganda, I don't think it's accidental, because the linguistic othering occurs in some of the territories. Folks in Puerto Rico, habla español. Folks in American Samoa use Samoan. Northern Marianas and Guam, it's at least Chamorro, if not several other languages. But the folks in D.C., there is no language called DCEs, bureaucratese, yeah. So when he puts the territories in D.C., oh, already. Okay, this is too important to not bring back on Tuesday, so I'll probably start the program with this on Tuesday.
We won't be here Tuesday, sir.
Schadenfreude. My bad. See you on Wednesday. Even you, Real Joe Cruz.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A deadly attack at a federal judge's home. I'm Sanchi Ingrasso, Fox News. A peaceful Sunday afternoon was shattered when a gunman invaded the New Jersey home of a federal judge, and now authorities are searching for